Okay, and regarding what Abert squirrel habitat, incorporates, we know that we're going to need to determine basal area, which is a forestry term. You'll understand it when you take forestry, but it's essentially how much wood per square area. So it's not volume of wood, it's an area of wood. It's just a unit that we use to kind of determine how dense forests are. So basal area is one factor that we might need to look at. Trees per acre would be another one. How many trees are there on site? And then size of trees, how many larger trees are there? And how many smaller trees are there? The other thing that affects Abert squirrel habitat is the presence of fungus. And so as you can see on this tree in front of me, that's an old ponderosa pine with this reddish bark. You're starting to see that the black ridges in it. Here's another older ponderosa pine. Now, they're not old when we talk about old trees, but a very mature ponderosa pine versus some of these trees here, like right in here. Okay, those are, see how the bark is a little grayer, darker. Not this one right there, not this one, but the rest of those. The bark is a little grayer, darker. Those are younger trees that like to grow. Typically, they're growing in denser stands than what you're seeing here. And we call those blackjack trees. Blackjack trees tend to produce fungus underneath them. And that fungus is a food source for the squirrel, especially in the winter. So we want to look at size of trees. We want to look at whether or not we have any of these little clusters of blackjack stands. The other thing we want to look at, and I'm going to move the camera up here, so we want to look at how connected the canopy is, right? So if Abert squirrel need to escape, they're going to do it through the canopy. So we need to look at whether or not they're able to do that. So the measurements that we're going to take today include these things. And with that, I'll stop and show you how to take the measurements. The first thing that we're going to do is to determine the basal area of this stand. So if my water bottle is plot center, this is really just forest measurements. So if you haven't had NRE 100, don't worry about the methods right here. If we were in the field, I would be relying on those classmates of yours that had NRE 100 or NRE 110 to do this, but the quick version is, this is what we call an angle gauge. And it has three what we call basal area factors, 5, 10, and 20. And I'm going to look through this gauge, and if the width of the tree trunk fills that 10 space, then I'm going to count that tree as in. So the goal here with determining my basal area of this plot is to see how many in trees I have. So I put this over plot center, and typically we start due north. I guess I'll do that for good measure. I put my gauge over center, hold it away from my nose. That big tree there is in, so that's 1. And I just spin. Too small, too small. That one's in, so that's 2. Those are too small, too small. 3, 4, ooh, that big one in the back, that's in. 5 and 6. So I got 6 in trees. That means that my basal area for this plot is 6 times 10, which would be 60 square feet per acre. So that's my basal area. Okay, now filling out my data form. I was at plot 1, right? And I recorded 6 in trees. And I have not taken their diameters yet. I'm going to do that next. Basal area for the point, we calculated that. So that would just be 60 feet squared per acre. Okay, and I haven't done trees in a plot yet. And so I don't have TPA. So now what we're going to do is show you how to get diameter.